to Macedonia about 10 years ago when we got married, and Eric's a math teacher at Kent Roosevelt High School. I'm a data analyst at Progressive Insurance, so Macedonia was halfway between both of our jobs. And we found UMC of Macedonia about 7 years ago, and we just absolutely love our church family. We go to both services when that was a thing, just depending on which service I would help teach the Kids First kiddos. And we just love the personality, the authenticity of our church family, and how service oriented everyone is, and that was a big draw when we were looking for churches, and just have really found a home with UMC of Macedonia. And Lynn had recently reached out and asked us to talk about growing our family and answered prayer, and how that sometimes might look a little different than we think, and that can be more of a journey than put in a prayer, you get an answer. So it's definitely been a journey, and I will say it's probably one of the biggest challenges I have faced. I guess I say the biggest challenge of my 30s, because I think different periods of your life bring different challenges. But from my perspective, I grew up with a big family. My parents are both one of 8 kids, and I have a ton of first cousins, ton of second cousins, and holidays were always filled with picnics and tons of people like laughing, shouting, yelling, arguing. There's usually some sport being played and some argument about who was winning, and it's a little crazy, but I loved it. I loved being surrounded by that big family, and I always pictured we would contribute to that one day. And we talked about it. We initially said we wanted 5 kids, which I think was a little ambitious. We said that before we had jobs and money, so maybe we're down to 3 now. But that was always in the plans. And we got married when we were 26, and started trying to have kids shortly after that. And I think it's something when you're in your 20s, you think it's just going to happen. No one really talks about when it doesn't happen or when it's hard. So I have to be honest, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of things that could be barriers to having a family. And we tried for maybe a year or so, and then ended up going to a fertility clinic in Akron, just not sure what was going on, but maybe we needed some help. And that is another struggle of infertility. You don't always know the why. But they do have clinics out there that are great, and you can get help. So we ended up switching after maybe, a year or so, to a clinic in Beechwood, closer to my work, and my sister-in-law had recommended it because her and my brother went there. And yeah, lots of fertility treatments, lots of calls to the insurance company, shots, and just a lot to it. And years that we've done this, and it still hasn't worked. And I have gotten pregnant a few times and had a few miscarriages, and to be honest with you, before I did, I'm not sure I even knew what a miscarriage was, and it wasn't something that was really talked about, but something that I realized is more common than we thought. And I know another struggle is at our age, a lot of our friends are having families, and some of them are having them quite easily. And good or bad, I do have a few friends who struggle like we have, and that has been a blessing in a sense, because we can have these conversations that no one really has about how this is hard, and the challenges that we face. And Lynn had talked about how this is a prayer journey for us. Probably in the beginning it was praying for a family, just as simple as that, and realizing after a few years in, maybe this isn't gonna go exactly how we thought. And I remember for me it kind of changed to whatever God's will is, whatever your will is, God, just make it okay in my heart. And that maybe transformed a little bit when you start seeing all those successful families around you being built, And for me, I've always been someone who wanted to celebrate that. And I love kids, and I want to be your biggest cheerleader if I find out you're having a child. And that became very hard for me. And I think my prayer at that point might have changed a little bit to, take away any bitterness or resentment I might have, regarding the happiness that others are finding on this journey.
So, I did not come from a big family. Unlike Ingrid's side of the family, my family was very spread out. Didn't have any relatives or anything close. So when Ingrid and I first started dating, I got immersed into a big, loud craziness of picnics and parties and like just get-togethers that I was not used to by any stretch. But I enjoyed it. It was fun to be around family. It was fun to be around, the craziness, if you will. But I will say, from that standpoint, we always wanted to have a family, and we always talked about wanting to build our own family and kind of start our own. So even when we first started dating, we talked about that. And when we got married, that was kind of always a thought. That was always the idea, that we would start a family sometime. And that prayer was always there to say, hey, Lord, we want to have a family. If you will bless us with a family and bring us whatever you have in your plan for us, just allow us to accept it. And it's easy to start that way and say, Lord, just kind of take us to where you need us to be. But when it continues to go on and it continues to be a struggle, and something that you really want doesn't happen, you definitely get frustrated and you start to struggle a little bit. And so you start to struggle in ways that you don't know how to deal with yourself, and you don't know how to even pray for necessarily. You start to think, what is it that I can pray that he doesn't already know that is going to allow me to be okay with this. So it was just a struggle in a tough way, because I would look at different things on prayer and just talk about how do I pray, and how would you get through difficult situations when prayer is something that the Lord already knows. At the same time, it's not supposed to be selfish. So I read things where you're also supposed to be talking about a personal story. So it was a lot of confusion back and forth, just not understanding what it is that I was supposed to pray. And I think that's the toughest thing, is because we think that it's supposed to be a specific way, and that we're supposed to say something in a special way when we pray. And so my prayers changed throughout the time, as Lord, whatever you want, just help us to be okay with that. Help us to grow our family in the way that you feel is your plan. Like, what is your idea? So we continued to go through our process, and obviously going through fertility treatments and going through all these different struggles definitely makes prayer sometimes more difficult, just because you don't know what to pray for, because it's been years and years of doing something that hasn't had success. And I remember this past year, just kind of, we were going through a fertility treatment, and I was just saying prayer, like changing prayer and just saying, Lord, we that what's on our heart, what we want, that we're here for a family, like, bless us with a baby, like a beautiful baby and a healthy baby. And at the time you're thinking, obviously short term, you're thinking get pregnant yourself. You're thinking to have one of our kids, a kid that we were able to do together. And at the time it doesn't happen, and you still kind of have your understanding when you're going in that that's a very good possibility. But you're still disappointed when it doesn't happen, and it's still kind of a struggle when it doesn't happen. But you know, the Lord works in His ways, and the things that we pray for, the things that we think we want, which we do, but the things that we think we need, or the way it's going to happen, is definitely not what happens.
Good. I think one thing that we've realized about prayer, and I don't know, there's many ways you can do it. It's not a straight line to an end goal. I think there's definitely an ebb and flow to it, and I think it can be messy. I think I can think of some angry prayers that I had, and I can think of some periods of time where I went away from prayer because my thought was, he knows. I've gone blue in the face telling him what I want and what we want. So there's times where I probably stepped away. There were times I felt like probably doing it out of habit, just saying, okay, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to pray about this. I'm supposed to believe that there's some plan and that I just need to trust and wait. And I'm not really good at either of those things. I am not. So we did a lot of that. And like I said, it was messy. It wasn't like we trusted and waited and we were just sitting here happy and sending up prayers every night and it was, all good. It was tough. It was really tough. There were a lot of emotions involved. And I feel like the reason, I guess we should get to the point. We ended up adopting a baby, William, who's sitting over there right now, earlier this month, and coming on the heels of doing a fertility treatment, getting pregnant, and having a miscarriage. And I kind of laugh because the reason I know it's from God is because in no way could we have planned it this way, and we didn't. If you asked me how this was going to happen, I would have said, well, most likely we would have gotten 2 kids from foster care, because that was also a path that we pursued with adoption. We said, we would either take 2 siblings, under the age of 4, or an infant, knowing that an infant would probably be a lot less likely, just from what we've heard. And, a month ago, we get a call on a Tuesday night from our social worker, and she says, hey, do you still want a baby? And, we're sitting down at 9 o'clock at night watching Wheel of Fortune, and God probably knew our lives were sad and we needed intervention at that point. and we get this call, and it totally blindsided us, and we were excited, and, the social worker says, a birth mom picked you. And I remember I asked the question, oh, when is she due? And she says, oh, she had the baby yesterday. And if you're ever hit with more of a reality check than that, I don't know one. Sorry if this is a little choppy. William wants to be on camera, although he's not allowed yet. But, there's no greater reality check than getting that phone call that says, do you still want a baby? He was born yesterday. And that meant getting ourselves together in less than 24 hours and driving to Toledo and picking up this baby. Obviously it wasn't that straightforward. We did spend a few days in Toledo. We ended up going to the NICU, but that decision pretty much had to be made Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and I will be honest, I panicked. I wasn't ready, and people keep telling us, oh, no one's ever ready, and there's a spectrum of not being ready. I understand you might be pregnant for 8 or 9 months, and then you're never really ready when the baby comes, but we got a phone call, and within 24 hours it was making the decision to be parents. And not having read any books, or no shower. We have nothing at the house, baby friendly. So it's the thing for me, Eric was so rock solid. He was a yes. He was a yes before we even got off the phone with the social worker, and I think I needed that. And again, that's just how this is from God. Like I couldn't have written this way, and we talk about our prayer lives. We had so many, I'll call them prayer warriors out there who were praying for us all along. And, while we might have ebbed and flowed, I think they never did. They knew something was up. They knew something was in store for Ingrid and Eric. And they never wavered. So that's our church family here in Macedonia. all the wonderful support we've had there. That's our church family at home in Madison, you know, in the church we grew up in. That's our family and our friends. And, you know, prayer isn't just two people. It rarely, you know, it's a community. And I think, you know, we needed that support. And, you know, knowing that they, you know, you all were behind us, you know, regardless of what our outcome ended up being. And something I wanted to say, you know, it's very important for people to know, adoption wasn't like plan B. It wasn't, oh, we couldn't have a baby, so we adopted. Never was it, you know, the consolation to having biological kids. You know, if you ask me what I thought it would be, I thought we would have 2 biological kids, and then we'd have 2 adopted kids, and, you know, it would fit into this nice plan that I had. And the only reason I put the biological kids first chronologically is because, you know, there is a time clock for that, and adoption not so much. But adoption was never plan B. We have a nephew who's adopted from Ethiopia.